After 48 hours in the storm, this incredible family dog rebuilds a heartwarming home together. The storm hit Maplewood like a freight train, a wild beast ripping through the peaceful town. In the eye of that tempest stood the Thompson family: Tom, Lisa, their 12-year-old son Jake, and their loyal golden retriever Buddy. It was a night that would change everything. As torrents unleashed from the dark sky, windows rattled and hearts raced. Inside their cozy home, laughter and dreams were swept away, leaving behind shattered pieces of their lives. Jake huddled in a corner, feeling the weight of his parents' worries on his small shoulders. Their dreams of a better life were as fragile as the very walls that now creaked and swayed violently around him. Cruel taunts from classmates haunted him like ghosts, whispering that he'd never be enough. But Buddy, with his golden fur and wagging tail, felt every hushed cry, offering a nudge that said, "You're never alone." The storm battered the Thompsons, ripping shingles from the roof and scattering possessions across the ground like broken wishes. As the tempest passed and silence draped over Maplewood, Tom and Lisa rushed into the chaos, overwhelmed by the damage. "We'll fix this, we have to fix this," Tom shouted, his voice lined with determination. Yet, as they salvaged remnants of furniture, their urgency made Jake feel invisible. "Mom! Dad!" he called, but his voice was drowned in the distant roar of worry. With each passing moment, Jake's heart sank further. He felt like an afterthought in a family consumed by a relentless pursuit of survival. Buddy, sensing the turmoil, was a beacon of joy amidst despair. He bounded around, chasing butterflies and giving wet-nosed kisses that made the Thompsons smile, if only for a fleeting second. "It's okay, Buddy," Jake whispered, sharing secrets meant for family ears. "I just want them to see me. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Days dragged on, and as they sifted through debris, tension bubbled. The actions of survival only masked deeper issues. Misunderstandings simmered beneath the surface, waiting for a spark. One evening, as Tom and Lisa argued about finances, Jake felt an aching in his chest. His heart raced. Was the thought of losing them worse than the storm? Buddy trotted over, sensing the pain in Jake's eyes. The boy knelt, wrapping his arms around the golden retriever's neck, pouring his heart into those soft, fur-covered ears. "I wish they understood," he murmured, confidence fading. Outside, the community of Maplewood stirred into action. Neighbors banded together, filling the streets with hope and camaraderie. It was a reminder that in the face of destruction, love could rebuild what was lost. But as the Thompsons counted their blessings, the real storms within their hearts loomed larger than dark clouds. Would the power of friendship mend their hidden wounds? Would they realize what was at stake before it was too late? With Buddy by their side, the family stood at the crossroad of rebuilding not just walls, but their very connection. The sun poked through the clouds the next morning, spilling golden light across the wreckage of Maplewood. The air felt different, almost electric, as if hope itself had taken form. It was time for the Thompsons to step outside their bubble of worry. Jake took a deep breath, inhaling the fresh scent of wet earth and newly blooming flowers. He knew he couldn't keep waiting for his parents to notice him. Maybe today would be the day he could make them see. He leaned down to Buddy, who was wagging his tail excitedly. "What do you say we help out?" Jake asked. The dog barked in agreement, as if to say, "Let's do this." The boy and his golden companion made their way toward the neighborhood, where neighbors were clearing debris, banding together like a team of superheroes. There was Mr. Anderson, struggling to lift a fallen tree branch, and Mrs. Patel, handing out bottles of water while chatting with her daughter. "Jake," called Mrs. Patel as they approached, "we could use some extra hands here." With a newfound determination, Jake jumped in. He helped clear the sidewalks of scattered branches and flattened boxes, and every time he looked up to see a smile form on the neighbors' faces, his heart swelled. Buddy was right beside him, dodging between legs, bringing joy with every wag of his tail. The community's laughter echoed around them, and for the first time since the storm, Jake felt a flicker of joy. He was seen, he was needed. As they worked, Tom and Lisa emerged from their home, glancing around at the busy streets. It was like a scene from a movie. The Thompsons watched as Jake grew more animated with each thank you he received. Sparks of pride ignited in their chests. But then came the guilt. Were they so lost in their own struggles that they hadn't seen their son's need for connection? Come on, Tom said, nudging Lisa gently. We should join him. Together they stepped into the fray. The weight of their worries was still present, but in that moment, the sight of Jake laughing, leading the charge, swept it away like the storm had done with fallen leaves. They approached, offering to lend a hand. Dad, we're helping, Jake shouted, his eyes glowing with excitement. And we can do it together, Lisa added, her voice full of warmth. They formed a little circle, and for the first time in days, there was laughter that rippled through the air, mingling with the sound of saws and hammers. After hours of labor, they stood back for a moment to admire their work. A section of the neighborhood that had felt so chaotic now felt infused with life. Smiles flashed all around and gratitude flowed freely. Jake, with Buddy by his side, beamed as he caught his parents' gaze. See, we can do this together, he said, pride radiating from him. But just as the sense of accomplishment set in, the sky darkened once more. A rumble of thunder echoed in the distance, sending a ripple of unease through the crowd. Tom grabbed Jake's shoulder tightly. Let us not let it get to us. We've survived the worst. We can face anything together. But as they began to pack up, Jake felt a tug in his chest. Would this fleeting moment of joy hold firm against the stormy shadows that loomed closer? With uncertainty swirling in the air, he exchanged a worried glance with Buddy. Just when the clouds rolled in, they were about to find out if hope could truly withstand whatever came next. The thunder rolled louder, and the first drops of rain began to splatter against the cracked pavement. The community's energy shifted. A collective breath held in anticipation. Jake looked up, his heart racing, imagining how quickly shattered hopes could be recast in shadows once more. Let us get inside, Tom urged, glancing at the gathering clouds. People began to disperse, worry etching lines across their faces. Each hurried step echoed the unspoken fear of losing the progress they just made. But Jake couldn't let go of the warmth they had created. Just a little longer, he said, kneeling beside Buddy, whose fur glistened in the soft light, droplets mingling with his joyful spirit. We can finish this. Lisa, still holding on to the moment of unity, knelt beside Jake. You're right, Buddy, she said, determination flickering in her eyes. Let us gather the last few things and see if we can get that tarp up before the rain comes. They worked in a flurry of motion, everyone hopping back into action. Tom and Jake secured the tarp, while Lisa rushed to grab their supplies. It felt like a race against time, yet laughter bubbled up again, punctuating the tension. Neighbors rallied despite the threatening skies, moving together as if held by invisible strings of hope. Over here, called Mr. Anderson. I could use an extra hand. Without hesitation, Jake sprinted over, the storm forgotten for a moment. He and Mr. Anderson tied down the last few corners of the tarp. There, that should keep things dry for now, Jake shouted, a smile bursting across his face as the wind howled. The first real downpour began. They all huddled under makeshift shelters. Getting wet was mostly unavoidable, but the camaraderie made it lighthearted. For a fleeting moment, fear slipped away, replaced by celebration of their hard work. Look at us. Who would have thought we'd turn this into a neighborhood party? Mrs. Patel laughed, shaking rain from her hair. Even as the storm grew louder, the Thompsons felt a shift within their bond. They stole glances, shared smiles, and relished what mattered most: their family, their community, their resilience. But just then, a distant crack of thunder caught everyone's attention, more menacing than before. The ground trembled slightly beneath them, and a sharp gust of wind rattled the tarp anew. Jake's heart sank again, caught between dual realities, the joy of helping, the fear of losing it all again. He looked at Buddy, who met his gaze with calm assurance. We'll be all right, right? Jake whispered, hoping that the stalwart furry friend shared his courage. Suddenly, the sound of a tree creaking caught their ears, a foreboding noise that escalated into a frantic rustling. Time almost seemed to halt as eyes turned upward to the trees lining the street. Get back! Someone yelled, but it was too late. In that instant, Jake's breath caught as a massive branch snapped, plummeting toward them, threatening to crush their fragile moment of hope. The storm had turned, and so too had their precarious happiness. What would happen next as they faced this looming danger? Would they find a way to protect what they had fought for? The branch crashed down, splintering when it hit the ground just a few feet away from where everyone stood. Gasps filled the air, fear striking at the hearts of those who had shared laughter moments earlier. The sound was deafening, and in those brief seconds time seemed to stretch. "Is everyone okay?" Jake shouted, scanning the crowd. His voice trembled but held a thread of urgency. He could see Lisa and Buddy frozen mere feet from the chaos. The sight flooded him with adrenaline. "Over here!" Tom yelled, rushing toward Mrs. Patel, who had stumbled back in shock. Their eyes met for the briefest of moments, an unspoken understanding passing between them, a reminder that together, they were stronger. With a quick glance, Jake added, "Lisa, get Buddy and help Mrs. Patel." Without waiting for a reply, he dashed toward the fallen branch. It was an impossible sight, heavy and imposing, but somehow, he knew they had to clear it. As he approached, voices filled the air, some encouraging while others expressed worry. The rain poured down fiercely now, making the ground muddy and treacherous. Yet, seeing his neighbors rally around him lit a fire within Jake. They were a team, a community, and storms could not break their spirit. "Jake, we need to move it to the side." Mr. Anderson's voice rang sharp with authority. "Pull it away from the tarp." "On three," Jake yelled, his heart racing. 1, 2, 3. Together they heaved with all their might. The wood groaned under the strain, but they were determined, weaving strength from their shared purpose. As they finally managed to roll the branch away, the relief that washed over them was palpable, mingling with the rain. They stood, panting, faces flushed but triumphant. "We did it!" Jake shouted, still catching his breath. The curtain of rain now felt like a celebration, washing them anew. But just as they began to regain their composure, the wind howled even more fiercely, and another crack of thunder erupted, louder this time. The atmosphere shifted again. Something felt off. "Everyone back under the tarp," Lisa called, her voice steady and comforting. She had Buddy by her side, the pup soaked but standing defiantly. Under the temporary haven, they clustered again, neighbors now united in the face of nature's wrath. However, beneath the excitement lingered a whisper of dread. What next? Jake pondered, glancing at Buddy, who nestled his warm body against Jake's. In that moment of quiet, surrounded by the chaos of rain and wind, Jake's mind raced. "We can't let this storm win," he said, his voice determined. "We should build something stronger. If we all work together, we can not only protect ourselves but create a place where we can gather, come rain or shine." His words hung in the air, igniting embers of hope in his neighbors' eyes. Faces lit up, weary yet aflame with that familiar spirit of resilience. It was no longer just about surviving the storm. It was about thriving beyond it. "Let us start planning," Lisa encouraged, pulling out a small notebook. "We can come up with ideas on what we want to build." As they mapped their thoughts, a flood of ideas poured forth, laughter rising over the storm sounds. Each suggestion sparked visions of a community center, a playground, even a garden that could flourish in this very spot. But just as hope swelled in their chests, the crack of yet another branch snapping spun them around. This time it sounded closer. Was their haven still safe? The storm's answer roared through the air, echoing an unsettled promise. They would have to act fast, not just for themselves, but for the dream they had all only just begun to share. Would they have the courage to face what was coming next? As the lightning flashed again, illuminating the faces of the gathered crowd, Jake felt a surge of anxiety. The snapping branch had been a warning, a reminder that nature was unpredictable and unforgiving. He could see the worry etched into Lisa's brow and the tremor in Buddy's tail as the storm bellowed overhead. "Stay close," Jake called out, pulling back from the edge of the tarp as the wind whipped at their shirts. The rain pounded like 1,000 drummers, each drop hammering down a message of urgency. "Might have to rethink our plans if the storm keeps hitting like this," Tom remarked, his eyes darting nervously to the trees around them. "The last thing we need is for that to happen again." "This is exactly why we need to build something strong," Jake replied fiercely, fire in his gut. "I don't want to live in a place where we have to worry about falling branches every time it rains." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the group. Feeling the anxiety around him, Jake stepped a little closer, leaning on the collective hope flowing back towards him. "We can make it happen," he assured them, his voice rising above the storm's roar. "There are vacant lots around, places where we can build together." Lisa nodded enthusiastically, her fingers scribbling notes furiously. "We can gather resources from everyone's yards. Old wood, materials we can salvage, we can ask the community for help. Everyone wants to pitch in." As the rain poured relentlessly, ideas continued to flow. A surge of creativity ignited amidst the turmoil. "What if we had a garden? A safe place for kids to play?" one neighbor suggested, her voice rising with excitement. "Or maybe a roofed area so we can gather no matter the weather." Another chimed in, her eyes sparkling despite the downpour. Jake's heart soared. There they were, embracing not just their fears but each other's dreams. He saw in their faces a determination that sparked a growing belief within him they'd survive the storm and rise to build something better. But just then, amidst the clamor, a louder crack of thunder echoed, followed by the ominous creaking of the trees surrounding them. Everyone froze, their breath hitching as another heavy gust swept through, shaking the tarp violently. "Everyone, back! Stand away from the edges!" Jake shouted, panic creeping into his voice as shoppers scrambled backward. Lisa instinctively moved to Buddy, hugging him tightly against her chest. The dog whimpered, sensing the anxiety rolling through the group. "Keep calm," Jake urged, swallowing his own fear. "We need to stay together. Look out for one another." Just then, a heavy thud resonated behind them. The crowd turned, and their collective gasp filled the air. The tent pole had bent, threatening to come crashing down. The sight was terrifying, and for a brief moment, nothing existed but shock. "Grab the sides. Hold it up," Tom yelled, rushing to assist Jake. Without a moment's hesitation, neighbors dove in, each one creating a human barricade. Jake kicked in the adrenaline, breathing heavily as he called out commands. "Tighten it. Don't let it fall. We can do this together." As they struggled to keep their shelter intact, Jake caught Lisa's eye. Her determination mirrored his. Suddenly, in the midst of storm chaos, an ember of resolve sparked further within him. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about creating a future. Every gust of wind, every flicker of lightning somehow stirred more than just fear. It fanned flames of hope. And just like that, amidst the tempest, the seeds of their shared dreams began to unfurl, each one tinged with the promise of brighter days to come. But as the storm raged on, a bittersweet thought nestled itself in Jake's mind. Would they have to fight through this much longer? The horizon looked dark, and the thought lingered, what sacrifices would they need to face before they could rise anew? The storm rumbled angrily in response, as if to say none would come easy. Lightning cracked again, sharp and fierce, shaking the very ground beneath them. Jake felt the thudding pulse of his heart, matching the ominous beats of the storm. He couldn't let the fear settle over him like the dark clouds. They had to keep pushing forward. "Everyone, focus," he shouted, rallying the group. "Hold tight. Think of what we're building together." His voice was a beacon amid the chaos, and he could see the resolve in the faces around him, determination mixed with a bit of fear. Lisa squeezed Buddy tight, her eyes dark but fierce. "We can hold this. We are stronger together, right?" she yelled, turning to the crowd, her voice cutting through the torrential rain. Heads nodded, fists pumped in unison, each person reaffirming their commitment to the moment. A particularly brutal gust of wind tore through the makeshift shelter, ripping at the tarp. "Jake, the side's coming loose," Tom shouted, jumping into action. The roof threatened to fold under the pressure, and without hesitation, everyone sprang to the sides to prop it up. Each person fought against the storm, hands slipping but hearts synchronized. "What if the poles break?" someone shouted from the back, uncertainty tinging their voice. Jake turned to face them, lifting his chin defiantly. "Then we'll find a way to fix them. We can't let a storm take away what we've started here." The crowd surged with new energy, gripping tighter and maneuvering around, piecing together a patchwork wall against the fury of nature. Then something shifted in the air. Lisa, still holding Buddy, gestured towards the edge of the tent. "Look, they're coming." Just then, other neighbors emerged from the rain, an unexpected wave of support. Brian, another local, led a group carrying tools and more materials for reinforcement. "Hang on. We got your backs," he yelled, his voice bolstered by an unwavering spirit. Suddenly, the wave of panic began to recede a little. The tide was turning. Side by side with the newcomers, they began to rebuild the barrier. The intensity of the storm did not falter, but Jake felt lighter, buoyed by the rush of warmth that spread through him as they banded closer. He didn't hear the rain hammering on the tarp anymore. He only heard the heartbeat of community. It transformed the fear into something tangible. But as they worked, the ground began to tremor beneath them, not from the storm, but from something else. A tree in the distance, pushed to its limits, began to sway perilously. "Look out!" Tom shouted, breaking the rhythm of their movement. Everyone instinctively ducked and braced for impact. Jake caught a glimpse of that tree tilting dangerously, and time stretched as he processed what was unfolding. A decision loomed overhead as high as the dark clouds. He could either stand frozen in fear or dart forward into the unknown, throwing himself toward an uncertain fate to save his friends. In that split second he knew his choice. "Everyone move. Get back," he hollered, sprinting toward Tom. The rush of adrenaline made his legs feel weightless, the urgency of the moment igniting a primal instinct deep within him. The lumbering tree groaned, its roots straining against the soil. Would they act in time? Would the safety of his friends outweigh the risk to himself? With the storm howling like a beast, Jake leaped into the fray, intent on snatching hope from despair. Would they take the leap together or be swallowed whole? What would it take to rise above the storm? Jake's heart raced as he propelled himself forward, the world around him blurring into a whirl of rain and chaos. He could hear the frantic gasps of his friends behind him, the desperate calls for safety mingling with the roar of the storm. Time seemed to stretch infinitely, a moment suspended between fear and hope. Then, without warning, the tree came down with a thunderous crash. The ground shook beneath them, and Jake felt a spray of water rise as debris flew into the air. He dove, arms wide, hoping to shield Tom from the impending disaster. In an instant, the world transformed. Instead of the sharp sting of pain, Jake collided with something soft, a body full of warmth. He opened his eyes to see Tom's face, flush with shock but miraculously unharmed. The tree had missed them by mere inches. "Get back. We have to move," Jake shouted, breathing heavily, adrenaline coursing through him. He could barely hear himself over the storm, but the urgency in his voice pierced the thrumming rain. He pulled Tom up, his muscles straining as he scanned their group for any sign of danger. Around them, chaos broke momentarily, neighbors skirting to safety, but Lisa stood her ground, still clutching Buddy tightly. "Is everyone okay?" she called out, her voice laced with worried determination. Jake's chest tightened, seeing her fear yet recognizing her fierce will to protect. "Yeah, but we need to regroup. Everyone back to the tent," Jake yelled, guiding Tom and Lisa back into the makeshift shelter, aided by others who had fled the danger just moments before. The storm remained ruthless, its anger unyielding, but the indomitable spirit of the community held them together. Once inside, they caught their breath as Lisa checked Buddy over, tears brimming in her eyes. "I was so scared," she admitted, her voice trembling. "But you were incredible, Jake." Jake shook his head, dismissing the praise as he grappled with the reality of what had just happened. "It was a team effort," he reminded her, squeezing her shoulder. "We did this together." Just then, the power of their collective determination surged anew. Voices rose around them, a chorus of shared resolves. "We're not done fighting," someone called out, instilling energy into their small soaked circle. The storm battered on, but inside the confines of the shelter, a newfound strength began to take root. "Let's South Shore this place up," Tom suggested, surveying the trembling tarp and loose poles. "We can each take a side, hold it together." The group nodded in agreement, scrambling to reinforce their defenses. They were more than just neighbors now. They were a lifeline for one another as they worked. Laughter bubbled unexpectedly, a stark contrast to the tempest outside. It was bright and fearless, echoing against the tarp, breaking the storm's relentless grip. "Remember that time we all got stuck at the 4th of July barbecue?" Brian chuckled, weaving a tight knot to hold the tarp down. The memory ignited smiles, loosening the tension holding them captive to fear. "Or the Halloween when you dressed as a giant taco," Lisa chimed in, laughter woven into her words, the colors of camaraderie shading the fear. And somehow each shared moment became a thread that stitched them tightly together, even in the face of adversity. Yet, just as they found their rhythm, the wind shifted again, signaling a new threat. A loud cracking noise resounded, cutting through their laughter. Everyone froze. Jake's stomach dropped. It was coming from behind them, and this time it felt more ominous than before. "What now?" Tom whispered, fear creeping back, unsettling the bond they had just forged. Jake took a breath, glancing at the spot where the sound had come from. "We'll figure it out together," he assured everyone, but inside a knot tightened. What more could come crashing down from the unforgiving skies? As they huddled closer, another rumble shook the ground, warning them before another crisis. Would they again stand united? Or was this storm ready to rip apart their fragile bond? Jake's heart raced once more. Would courage be enough for them to face whatever was next? The wind howled fiercely, rattling the tarp that barely held together over their heads. Jake's heart pounded as he exchanged glances with his friends. The quicksilver flash of fear in their eyes mirrored his own. Every heartbeat pulsed with a mix of resolve and dread. "We can't just sit here," Lisa exclaimed, gripping Buddy tighter against her chest. The dog whimpered softly, sensing the tension. What if before she could finish her thought, the sound came again, sharper this time, echoing like thunder in the distance. "Is it the tree again?" Brian asked, his voice trembling with uncertainty. The idea hung in the air, heavy and unwelcome. "I don't know," Jake replied, "but we need to make sure this place is secure. Let us expand our shelter." He glanced at the tarp, its corners flapping wildly as if trying to escape the chaos above. "We can use whatever we can find." In the blur of adrenaline, the group sprang into action. They grabbed makeshift supports, broken branches, fallen furniture, anything that could add structure. Hands moved in a blur as they reinforced the corners, each task bringing them closer, stitching their spirits together tighter than any storm could tear apart. All the while, the storm raged on. Rain poured like 1,000 tiny daggers against the tarp. The wind shrieked with a life of its own. And yet within the little shelter, laughter began to spill once more. "I've got this," Tom declared, climbing up on a shaky stool to secure the curtain of tarps with a more permanent hold. "Just call me the storm chaser. And if you blow away, we'll send Buddy after you." Lisa laughed, her cheeks flushed from the chaos and the rush of camaraderie. After catching her breath, Lisa turned serious. "We've faced worse than this before. Remember the flood last summer? Or when that fire threatened the neighborhood?" "That was different," Tom interjected, trying to gauge the weight of their current situation. "This storm, it could wipe us all out." Jake could feel a chill wash over the excitement, but he clung to the energy of their laughter. "We can do this. As long as we stick together," he said firmly, his voice steadying them. "We have each other, and that means everything." As they continued to build, the laughter rose and fell, but moments of silence flickered like fireflies in the darkness. Each second they spent working was a small victory against an overwhelming force, an act of defiance against the storm that seemed determined to break them. Then suddenly a massive gust ripped through, tearing one side of their tarp free. "Hold it down!" Jake shouted, lunging toward the fluttering cover. He managed to snatch it just in time, his fingers gripping the frayed edge. The wind shrieked in response, slapping rain against their faces. They struggled against it, fighting to keep their shelter intact. Everyone threw their weight against the tarp, saving it from being whisked away into the dark, angry sky. Their effort was a collage of desperate shouts and frantic motions. It was all-consuming, but amid the chaos, a moment of clarity pierced through Jake's mind. "Together!" He yelled again, the word echoing above the storm, something to rally around, something to hold on to. With renewed determination, they fought to align themselves, like a human barricade against the relentless storm. Just as they regained their footing, the ground shook once more. A deeper rumble that signified something more sinister. A tree branch, much larger than before, splintered overhead, bouncing through the air as if it were alive with fury. "What was that?" Tom gasped, his earlier bravado gone. Jake's heart sank. I don't know, he was terrified for his friends, for Lisa, and that poor pup in her arms. The sense of community that had strengthened them was now tested in the crucible of uncertainty. Could they stave off the assault of nature's wrath? With each passing moment, the stakes soared higher. They had to face the unknown, not just for themselves but for one another. And a single nagging thought lodged in Jake's mind as he glanced above. searching for any sign of what was to come next. What if this was not just about surviving the storm but about building something new in its wake? As lightning cracked the sky again, they stood ready, but the question lingered heavy. Was the storm merely a test, or was it a herald of something more? The storm howled menacingly, each gust gnashing at their fragile sanctuary. As they struggled to keep the tarp secured, Jake felt an ember of determination ignite within him. The world outside was chaos, but here they stood united, a chain of will against the tempest. "Look!" Brian shouted, eyes wide. The fierce winds had uncovered a glimpse of blue sky, fleeting yet beautiful. But the joy was short-lived as another boom of thunder rumbled across the landscape, reminding them of the storm's wrath. Lisa, still clutching Buddy, looked around. "We can't let fear win. What do we do next?" Her voice wavered, but her grip on the little dog was unwavering. A lifeline in this storm of uncertainty. "We need to find a better place to hide from the wind," Jake suggested, wiping rain from his brow. He could feel the tension in the air like static electricity, but he didn't want fear to be their guide. "Maybe the old shed? It might keep us safer." Tom nodded, his face set with determination. "Let us make a run for it. We'll have to coordinate while we tear down the tarp." With hearts pounding, the group huddled close, swirling to form a plan. One by one they unfastened the tarp, each pull echoing against the wind's vicious roar. They threw glances at the dark sky. "On three," Jake yelled. He could see Buddy shifting uncomfortably in Lisa's arms. "1, 2, 3. They bolted, sprinting through the flickering shadows of the storm. A thick cloak of rain smeared their vision, but they pressed on, laughter spilling out even through their panic. The very act of running together gave them courage. As they reached the shed, Jake shoved the door open. It creaked loudly, a haunting sound swallowed whole by the storm. Inside, the air was musty and old tools lay scattered. Dust motes danced in the few shafts of light that pierced through cracked windows. "Hurry! Inside!" Lisa shouted, ushering Buddy through the door. The pup immediately scampered to a corner, seeking refuge from the noise. The shed felt solid. It provided a barrier against the fury outside. Tom and Brian hurried to pile old wood and scraps inside, creating a barrier. Jake pushed against the door, feeling the wind trying to tear it from his grasp. This wasn't just about them anymore. They were protecting something precious. Once the door was secured, they all huddled in a tight circle, catching their breath. The growl of the storm dimmed slightly outside, replaced by the heartbeats of friends bonded by an unspoken understanding. "Okay, so what's next?" Tom asked, wiping rain from his brow. Lisa's face softened as she stroked Buddy, who looked up at her with trusting eyes. "Maybe we can turn this shed into a home base until the storm blows over? We can make it cozy. Yeah, with this wood and some old blankets we can make it livable. At least for now," Brian added, optimism blooming in his voice. "We can do this, right?" Jake said, looking around at their faces. In the dim light he saw lingering fear, but also determination, a primal instinct to care for one another in the face of adversity. Together they chorused, the word stronger than any wind. They began moving, gathering what they could find. Old newspapers for warmth, discarded blankets, and pieces of rope to tie things down. In the chaos, laughter bubbled up again as they shared stories about the old shed. "Remember when that raccoon got in here last fall?" Tom chuckled, his voice steadying the group's spirits. "Yes," Lisa laughed. "We all screamed like babies." Time passed in a blur as they transformed the shed. They created a makeshift sleeping area. Laughter mingled with the sound of rain on the roof. They had carved a little piece of safety from the storm. But just as the warmth of their camaraderie wrapped around them, the world outside erupted again. This time with a noise far more terrifying than anything they'd encountered so far. A blinding flash lit the sky, followed by a crash that shook the very ground beneath them. What was that? Brian's voice was shaky, eyes wide with fear. Jake's mind raced. They had made it this far, but what was waiting for them outside? The question echoed in his heart. What if they weren't just building a shelter? What if this storm was about to reveal something deeper within them all? Jake's heart raced as the vibrations of the thunder reverberated through the shed. They huddled together, their breath quickening. The laughter from moments before faded, replaced by a heavy silence laden with uncertainty. The storm was relentless, but so were they. Stay calm, Jake said, determination flickering in his eyes. Whatever is out there, we've made it this far together. We can get through this. Around him the group nodded, the shared resolve palpable. What if it's another tree? Lisa voiced, her grip tightening around Buddy, who was leaning heavily against her leg. Then we need to be ready, Tom countered, looking around at the old tools littered about. We can't let it take us off guard again. Each of them found something to brace themselves not just physically but mentally. They were no longer just taking shelter from the storm. They were preparing to face it. Let us work together to fortify this place, Jake suggested, directing the group to move quickly. They were energized by the thought of creating something stronger. We can use these boards and rope to secure the windows. Every bit helps. Hands scrambled, and the atmosphere shifted from fear to action. They worked in synchrony, not just banding together against the storm, but weaving their own strength into each nail and fastening. Budley was at their feet, softening the tension with gentle nudges, a silent reminder of unconditional love. Minutes became hours as they secured the shed, transforming it into a stronghold. Suddenly, the rain seemed to lighten, almost as if the storm was reconsidering its assault, and the wind began to quiet. A momentary calm washed over their little crew, and they dared to hope. Well, that's something, Brian exclaimed, exhaustion and exhilaration mingling in his voice. We've created a fortress. Jake smiled at the affirmation, but beyond the walls, the remnants of the storm still lingered ominously, an echo of the chaos preceding the calm. Yet standing shoulder to shoulder, they felt a spark of defiance. Then a loud crack rang out. A moment later, a loud thud hit the door, and the collective gasp swept through the shed like wildfire. Stay inside, Jake shouted, body tensing. They focused on the door, waiting for whatever was next. Adrenaline coursed through his veins. Would they have the courage to face the unknown? Lisa's eyes were wide, gripping Buddy tighter. Jake felt a wave of protective instinct surge within him. This wasn't just a storm. It was about more than just safety. It was about family and community. Together. He shouted again, feeling the surge of courage flare up within them all. Whatever is out there, remember we're one unit. We face it together. Tom took a deep breath, slowly edging closer to the door. With each beat, Jake's heart felt lighter in his chest. Whenever we open this door, we stand strong. No matter what. In that moment, Jake found clarity. This storm, fierce and mean, had become the catalyst for something beautiful. It stripped away distractions, exposing the essence of who they were: human, vulnerable but also relentlessly hopeful. On the count of 3, Jake said, glancing around at the faces of those he cared for the most. 1, 2, 3. With a solid push, Jake flung the door wide open. A surge of rain rushed in, mixed with fresh air that felt alive. The storm had finally turned clouds and chaos began to weave away, revealing a gentle soft glow of the sunset breaking through. The surrounding chaos faded slightly, their fervor rippling outwards as they saw their neighborhood, battered yet still standing. Each familiar face emerged through the debris, eyes wide with surprise and relief. For the first time, a tentative smile creased Jake's face. We made it, didn't we? He breathed, looking over at his team, his family. They squeezed together, hearts interconnected by shared challenges. All around them, neighbors emerged, nodding with understanding. Everyone had fought their own battles and survived, and the storm had gifted them a chance to realize the unbreakable bonds they shared. Then, with strong voices, laughter burst forth. What now? They asked one another. Jake raised his chin, eyes glinting in the golden light that peeked through the clouds. Now we build not just our homes again but our lives together. Unity sparked in the air, laughter and hope intertwining as everyone moved forward, driving away the fear that had tried to settle over them. With Buddy bounding happily at their feet, the Thompsons and their community stood together, radiant with joy and resilience. They knew that no storm could erase the strength they harnessed from each other. As they started their journey down the road of recovery, a bond rooted in love and understanding grew steadfast. This new beginning, forged in struggle, was bright and promising, and so much more than they could have ever imagined. This was the transformation they needed all along. And as the sun set over Maplewood, they finally felt the warmth spreading through their hearts, a reminder that together they could rebuild whatever the storm had tried to tear apart. If you found inspiration in this story, This is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive stories that will fill your heart with hope. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help more people find this uplifting journey. Comment below your reactions and feelings about this ending. Your words matter. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Let us spread the love and resilience.